All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Nigeria and
Okay.
some of the problems that it's facing.
Right.
And the source that we're going to be looking at is from Restore Nigeria News,
Mm-hmm.
and it's titled "Nigeria's on a Perilous Path, No Promising Future in Sight."
Oh, wow.
And it was written by Bugaje,
Okay.
and this was published on February 4th, 2025.
Okay.
So
Very recent.
yeah, very recent, and it doesn't look good.
Oh, no.
So
All right. Well,
yeah, so let's jump into it.
let's jump in. I'm interested to hear what Bugaji has to say.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this article is that it features Usman Bugaje,
Okay.
and he's a prominent elder statesman.
Mm-hmm.
And when he speaks, uh, people listen.
Right.
That
So
they-
he's a voice of authority.
He is a voice of authority, and so when he's saying that things are bad,
Yeah.
people take notice.
I see.
And he's speaking specifically about northern Nigeria.
Okay. And that's significant, I imagine, because
Well,
northern Nigeria represents a significant portion of the country.
absolutely. So northern Nigeria is, it has a very diverse population.
Mm-hmm.
A very large portion of the country is in northern Nigeria.
Right.
And historically, it's been very influential within the country as a whole.
I see.
And so what he's saying is that the North is facing a convergence of crises,
Oh,
including economic hardship, social unrest, and a pervasive sense of political despair.
wow. That paints a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So it's not just like one issue. It's like,
No, it's like all these things are kind of coming together.
yeah.
And to make matters worse, he doesn't just make these pronouncements of
Mhm.
doom and gloom.
Yeah.
He backs it up with some pretty alarming statistics.
Okay, I quit.
So he cites over 33 million Nigerians who are facing hunger
Oh, my goodness.
and a national currency that has depreciated so drastically
Yeah.
that the minimum wage can barely cover basic necessities,
Wow.
and a staggering 20 million children out of school,
Goodness.
with a majority of them concentrated in the north.
Oh, wow. So this is
So these aren't just numbers.
right.
These represent real people
Yeah.
facing real struggles.
And those numbers are huge.
Yeah.
I mean, 33 million people facing hunger, 20 million children out of school. That's
It's a huge problem.
a significant portion of the population.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the potential consequences of these issues are far-reaching.
So what are we talking about here? Like, what could happen if
Yeah.
this continues?
Well, you could have widespread food insecurity.
Right.
You could have economic instability
Mhm.
that impacts every level of society,
Yeah.
and an entire generation missing out on education.
Wow.
And that sets the stage for a very uncertain and potentially volatile future.
That's really concerning.
Yeah, it is. It's like a domino effect. Like
Yeah.
one problem just leads into the next one, and it just
Yeah.
makes everything worse.
And it seems like education being impacted is like a
Really?
key factor in.
He highlights that nearly 60% of students in northern tertiary institutions are unable to resume their education
Wow.
because they can't afford it.
Gosh,
So,
that's perpetuating a cycle of poverty then.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking
Yeah.
because you're looking at a potential future with a workforce that lacks essential skills.
Right.
And it's going to limit opportunities for economic advancement.
Yeah.
And it could very well lead to more social unrest
Of course.
as people become more disillusioned with their prospects.
Yeah, because they don't have a way out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes this article so unsettling.
Right. It's not just a doom and gloom prediction. It's like, this is a very real possibility.
It is. And it's not just the economic and social woes that are alarming.
Okay.
He also is very critical of the political landscape.
Okay.
So he's basically accusing the political elite of being more concerned with holding on to power than actually tackling these critical issues.
And I imagine that Nigeria's political landscape has a certain history to it that might be contributing to this.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about...
Yeah. So for decades,
Yeah.
Nigeria has struggled with corruption and a winner-takes-all political system
Right.
that often prioritizes personal gain
Right.
over public service.
So it's very self-serving.
Very self-serving. And so Bagaja is arguing that this deep-seated corruption is directly contributing to the current crises.
So it's not just like an unfortunate byproduct. It's like it's actually causing these problems.
Just fueling it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mince words when he describes the situation.
Really?
He uses some very strong imagery.
Like what?
He says that politicians are shamelessly reveling in a facade of success while surrounded by sycophants, opportunists, and a contingent of thugs.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty harsh assessment.
It is, and it's a pretty scathing indictment of the political class.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like,
What?
if the people who are in power are seen as corrupt, then who do you trust?
Exactly.
Right. So how do you actually make meaningful change?
Right. It erodes trust in the entire system.
Exactly.
And when you don't have trust,
Yeah.
it makes it incredibly difficult to enact any meaningful change.
Right, because even if somebody comes along who has good intentions,
Right.
nobody's going to trust them.
Right. And so it's not just a lack of resources or expertise that's holding the country back.
Right.
It's also this lack of faith
Yeah.
in those who are supposed to be leading the way forward.
It's like a fundamental breakdown of trust
Exactly.
in the entire system.
And so the article doesn't end there.
Okay.
It also introduces another voice echoing Bugaje's concerns.
Okay, who's that?
And this is Tom Mayashi.
Okay.
And he's the chairman of the Ariwa Movement for Good Governance.
Okay, so this is an organization.
Yes, this is an organization
Okay.
that advocates for better leadership and policies.
Okay, so they're not just a random commentator. They're actually
They're,
involved.
They're a prominent voice in northern Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So when he comes out and says that the region is on the brink of collapse,
Wow.
people are going to take notice.
Yeah, I mean,
And the Ariwa Movement for Good Governance has been a vocal critic
okay.
of corruption and mismanagement for years.
I see.
And they're advocating for a more transparent and accountable government.
So they're really trying to address that core issue of the lack of trust
Exactly.
in the system.
And so their perspective carries a lot of weight, especially in the North.
Right, because they've been working on this for a while, so they're not just
They're not
coming out of the woodwork now that things are really bad.
right. They've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so he doesn't just reiterate Bugaji's points.
Okay.
He goes a step further,
Okay.
and he issues a call for unity among the people of the North
Okay.
to safeguard the region's future.
So he's saying it's not enough to just complain.
Right.
You have to actually come together and do something.
Absolutely. And it's a powerful message because it suggests that despite the dire circumstances,
Yeah.
there's still hope
Okay.
if people come together and demand better from their leaders.
So it's like a call to action.
It is.
All right, so can collective action
Well,
really overcome
that's the
those
question.
deep-rooted issues?
That's a great question.
I mean, is that
Yeah.
possible, or is that just wishful thinking?
That's what we need to find out.
Yeah, that is the question, isn't
So,
it?
I mean, it sounds a bit like a chicken and egg scenario,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
Like you need a functioning system
Mhm.
for collective action to be effective,
Right.
but the system itself is broken.
Yeah.
So where do you even begin?
Well, Bugaja and Mayashi seem to agree that tackling the leadership crisis is paramount.
So fix the foundation
Yeah.
before you build the house.
Exactly. And they emphasize the importance of holding current leaders accountable and demanding transparency
Okay.
and pushing for policies that prioritize the needs of the people.
Okay, but that sounds great on paper.
Right.
But how do you actually achieve that when the system seems to reward corruption and self-interest?
It's a challenge.
It's like trying to swim upstream against a raging current.
Yeah, it's a monumental challenge. But both Bugaje and Mayashi
Okay.
point to historical examples
Mm-hmm.
where grassroots movements have managed to create enough pressure
Okay.
to force change.
So they believe that if citizens...
Right, particularly those in the North.
Okay.
If they unite and demand better, it can shift the balance of power.
So are we talking about organized protests,
Potentially?
community activism, raising awareness through the media?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's about mobilizing communities,
Mm-hmm.
holding leaders accountable through peaceful demonstrations,
Okay.
and leveraging the power of the press to expose corruption and advocate for reform.
But even if you manage to create a more transparent and accountable government,
Right.
that doesn't magically solve the other issues.
Right.
What about those millions facing hunger? And those 20 million children out of school?
Those are immediate crises that
Yeah.
need attention.
Yeah.
And addressing the poverty and hunger in the North will likely involve a multi-pronged approach.
Mm-hmm.
So in investing in sustainable agriculture,
Okay.
creating job opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and providing social safety nets for the most vulnerable.
So it's not just about giving handouts.
Exactly. It's about empowering people to lift themselves out of poverty.
And what about education?
Yeah.
Like, they need a massive overhaul to get those millions of kids back in school.
It's a daunting task.
Where do you even begin to address an issue of that scale?
Well, it's not just about building more schools.
Right.
It's about ensuring access to quality education that equips children with the skills they need to thrive.
Okay.
So investing in teacher training, improving infrastructure, and making education affordable and accessible to all.
So you're talking about breaking down those barriers
Yeah.
that prevent children from getting a decent education.
Yeah. Poverty, location, social status, all those factors play a role.
Okay, so we've been talking about potential solutions.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what are some specific examples of initiatives that could be implemented?
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to talk about investing in education or sustainable agriculture,
Right.
but what does that actually look like on the ground?
That's a great question, and it highlights the need to move beyond generalizations and delve into practical solutions.
Okay.
So, for example, when it comes to education, one successful model has been the establishment of community-run schools.
Okay.
These schools are often more accessible to children in remote areas
Right.
and can be tailored to meet the specific needs of the community.
So it's about empowering local communities to take ownership of their children's education.
Exactly.
Uh.
Another promising initiative is the use of technology
Okay.
to bridge the educational gap. So things like mobile learning platforms and online resources can provide access to quality educational materials, even in areas where traditional schools are scarce.
So it's about using technology to bypass those infrastructural limitations.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when it comes to agriculture,
Okay.
there are numerous initiatives focused on promoting sustainable farming practices, improving crop yields,
Okay.
and connecting farmers to markets.
Okay.
One example is the introduction of drought-resistant crops,
Okay.
which can help farmers in arid regions cope with the challenges of climate change.
So it's about finding ways to make agriculture more resilient and productive.
Exactly.
Oh.
Especially in the face of a changing climate.
Okay. And are there other initiatives out there?
Absolutely. There are also initiatives focused on empowering women in agriculture.
Okay.
Providing them with access to land, credit, and training can significantly boost agricultural output and improve the livelihoods of entire communities.
So it sounds like there are a lot of innovative ideas out there.
Yeah.
But how do you ensure that these initiatives are implemented effectively and reach the people who need them most?
Well, that's where transparency and accountability come into play again.
Okay.
It's crucial to have systems in place to monitor these initiatives, evaluate their impact,
Okay.
and hold those responsible accountable for their success.
So it's not just about throwing money at the problem. It's
Yeah.
about making sure that money is used wisely
Exactly.
and actually benefits the people it's intended to help.
And that's where the role of civil society organizations becomes so important.
Okay. How so?
Well, they can act as watchdogs,
Okay.
holding the government and aid organizations accountable for their actions and ensuring that resources reach their intended beneficiaries.
So it sounds like a multifaceted approach is needed.
Yeah.
You've got the grassroots activism to push for political reform, coupled with these targeted initiatives to address the immediate needs like poverty and education.
It's a complex situation with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But the article, despite its bleak assessment, does offer a glimmer of hope.
So what is that glimmer of hope? Is it simply the fact that people like Bugaj and Mayashi are speaking out?
It's a combination of factors.
Okay.
Yes, the fact that prominent voices are raising the alarm is important. It puts pressure on those in power
Okay.
and forces them to acknowledge the severity of the situation.
But there's
also a growing recognition among Nigerians themselves
Okay.
that the status quo is unsustainable.
So there's a sense of urgency, a feeling that things can't continue as they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that sense of urgency is translating into action.
Okay.
So we're seeing more and more grassroots organizations springing up, demanding better governance,
Okay.
advocating for social justice, and working to create a more equitable society.
So it's not just about waiting for the government to fix things.
Right.
It's about people taking matters into their own hands.
Exactly. And that's where the real hope lies.
Okay.
In the energy and determination of those who are working tirelessly to create a better future for Nigeria.
It's inspiring to hear about those efforts, but
It also makes you wonder about the role of the international community.
Okay.
Can or should outside forces play a part in addressing these challenges, or is that seen as meddling in another country's affairs?
that's a delicate question.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there's the issue of sovereignty.
Right.
Nigeria is an independent nation, and many would argue it's up to Nigerians to solve their own problems.
But on the other hand, we're talking about issues like poverty and lack of education
Right.
that have global implications. And if a country is truly teetering on the brink of collapse, as Mayashi suggests,
Yeah.
wouldn't there be a moral imperative to intervene?
There's definitely a debate to be had there.
Yeah.
Some might argue for targeted aid programs or diplomatic efforts to support positive change.
Okay.
Others might advocate for stronger measures like sanctions against corrupt officials or even, in extreme cases, military intervention.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. This deep dive has certainly painted a sobering picture of Nigeria's current state, particularly in the north.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also explored some potential pathways for positive change.
Right.
It seems like the key takeaway is that while the challenges are immense,
Yeah.
the situation isn't entirely hopeless.
I agree. The article highlights the resilience of the Nigerian people and their desire for a better future.
Okay.
And while the path ahead is undoubtedly difficult, the article ultimately offers a message of hope.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, positive change is possible.
Okay.
Through collective action, unwavering determination, and a
Yeah.
belief in the power of human ingenuity to overcome even the most daunting challenges.
Yeah, it's a tough question, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
And it kind of makes you think about, what are our responsibilities to each other on a global scale?
Right, because it's easy to say, well, that's their problem.
Right.
They need to solve it.
Right.
But then when you see the scale of the suffering.
Right. And the potential consequences
Yeah.
for the entire world, it's hard to just sit back and do nothing.
It really is. And I think it comes down to a case-by-case basis, right? You have to consider the context,
Yeah.
the potential benefits and risks of any kind of intervention,
Mm-hmm.
and most importantly, the voices of the people who are actually affected.
Right, because these aren't just abstract geopolitical issues.
Is it?
We're talking about real people's lives.
Yeah, with real struggles.
Millions of individuals struggling with poverty, hunger,
Yeah.
lack of education, and a political system that often fails to serve them.
Right. And it's so easy to get caught up in the statistics and the complexities of the problems.
Right.
But we have to remember that there are human beings
Yeah.
behind these issues.
And that's why it's so important to listen to those voices,
Absolutely.
to understand their perspectives,
Yeah.
and to support their efforts to create change.
Because they're the ones who are living it every single day.
Exactly. This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
We've really delved into the depths of Nigeria's current crisis, particularly in the north, and I think we've explored the complexities and the interconnected nature of these challenges.
Because it's not just one thing.
Right.
It's everything.
It's all these things coming together. We looked at the alarming statistics, the harsh realities that millions of people are facing, and the systemic issues that are perpetuating these problems.
Yeah, the things that are keeping this cycle going.
Right, but we didn't just focus on the darkness.
Right.
We also, shed light on the glimmers of hope. The individuals and organizations that are working tirelessly to create a brighter future.
The people who are on the ground making a difference.
The grassroots movements that are pushing for political reform, the innovative initiatives that are addressing poverty and lack of education, and the unwavering resilience of the Nigerian people.
That's what's really inspiring.
It is, and I think what's really struck me is the power of collective action. The idea that even in the face of what seem to be insurmountable obstacles, people can come together and demand better from their leaders, from their institutions, from themselves.
It's about taking ownership.
It is.
Of your own future.
And that's the enduring message of hope that emerges from this deep dive.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that change is possible even in the most challenging of circumstances.
It is, and it requires a willingness to confront those difficult realities, a commitment to working together, and a belief in the power of human ingenuity to overcome adversity.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what can we as individuals take away from this conversation?
Well, I think...
Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
It is.
By the scale of these global challenges. You had to feel powerless in the face of such complexity.
And yet every action, every little thing we do can contribute to a better future.
I think this conversation has highlighted that even small actions can make a difference.
They absolutely can.
Yeah.
And staying informed is a big part of it, right? Educating yourself about global issues, supporting organizations that are working to address these challenges, amplifying the voices
Yes.
of those who are fighting for change.
Absolutely.
And engaging in meaningful conversations about these complex issues.
All of those things.
All of those things contribute to a greater understanding and can ultimately lead to positive change.
It's a call to action.
It is.
Not just for those who are directly affected by these issues, but for all of us who believe in a more just and equitable world.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected.
Absolutely.
And that our actions, no matter how small, can ripple outwards and contribute to a better future.
And that's a powerful thought.
It is. So as we conclude this deep dive, I encourage you to delve deeper into the issues we've discussed, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to consider how you can contribute to positive change in whatever way you can.
Because even in the darkest of times, hope persists.
It does.
The human spirit is capable of remarkable resilience, innovation, and compassion.
Absolutely.
And it's in those qualities that we find the strength to face these challenges.
Yes.
To seek solutions and to build a better world.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.